All right, it's been a couple of weeks. There's been a lot happening, but here we are again for another edition of the New Zealand Aviation Podcast. Paul Brennan in the bunker in Auckland. Martin, where are you?
Suburban Brisbane.
Look like you're out on the patio. Maybe you're about to have a barbie.
I'm out. No, although it's been warm enough. No, I'm just sitting outside because it's a nice evening.
Okay, well, it might be a bit choppy on the internet connection. We'll see how we go, but we can hear what you're saying. Okay, so across the state line, Victorians are living in, would it be too much to describe it as a sort of like a dystopian 1984 type world where if you go out, you must hide your face. You can't go further than 5 kilometers, as I understand it. And people have been busted for, bike riding a few meters beyond that sort of distance. You can't, you have to wear masks. It's compulsory out there. And there's a curfew, I believe. My golly. What are you thinking your side of the border when you're looking at that?
Yeah, it's pretty, sounds pretty drastic down there. Absolutely. Yeah.
What are people saying though?
There's a few complaints.
Oh, you mean a few complaints? Well, only a few.
People are not as happy as they might be. I'll show you something. Unfortunately, I don't think the orientation's going to be. Oh dear, I can't show you that.
Don't want to see that.
This. I don't know if I can turn. I can't turn it, unfortunately. You'll have to turn your head, but you can see there's that's a cartoon about Melbourne. There's Stockholm syndrome, where all the Swedes are outside enjoying the summer, and then there's Melbourne syndrome, where they're all sitting in basements with masks on, hating their lives.
Yeah. But, there does seem to be. I've thought about this earlier on in this process, but you just reminded me. There does seem to be an element of self-loathing that's coming out in all of this. There's like a willingness to self-loathe.
There does definitely seem to be something like that. Yeah, it's people are. It seems to be that they're enjoying the suffering. I don't know.
I think it might go along with the phenomenon that you see in the climate change movement as well. We're sort of as gloomy and doomy as you can be, and you self-loathe as a species that is infecting the earth. It's the same sort of mindset being applied to this new set of circumstances, I guess is what I'm trying to say. So, okay, here we go. Exactly. Look at the puddles on the floor.
Yeah.
I mean, that sort of captures it quite well. But it's that sort of willingness to really be down on the human condition that seems to be coming out here. Through this whole lockdown and societal response to this pandemic. Well, I see the Extinction Rebellion people are doing another protest in London. I heard an interview, one of the organisers, a former police detective, and he was absolutely convinced that there was a mass extinction coming, including human beings, like really soon, and that he saw his organisation and like-minded people as almost like grabbing the controls of the plane and just pulling it out of the dive at the last moment. Completely over the top, just so absolutely convinced that it was all over. And it's too much. He doth protest too much, Martin.
Yes.
Anyway,
it's
but we're coming out of the lockdown level 3. To apparently level 2.5 tomorrow, Monday. And that means that people can sort of move around, go into work, do the social distancing, wash their hands. I believe that still remains as one of the best ways to, shield yourself and from others and yourself from others. And the wearing of masks are mandatory on public transport. And I've made a comment about that. I think that, compelled clothing, coerced by the state with the enforcement of the police force. But on coming here tonight, guess what I did? I wore a mask on the bus. But I wasn't compelled to do it. I made my own decision.
There you go. There you go. That makes all the difference, right?
What would you do?
Well, I mean, you have to wear the mask, right? That's what they want. If you want to take a bus trip, you're going to wear the mask.
Well, no, that's from midnight to night. I was doing that already today, and I've done it before already. The principle being, should it be compelled? And, you know, should you not be able to travel home on the bus if you're not wearing a mask? It doesn't seem to be much information that or if there is information, it's conflicting information as to whether it's effective at all. And if it's not, it's just I've described it as a sort of state-sponsored virtue, you know, promotional exercise. Anyway.
Yeah. Yes, indeed.
Not to mention aviation being completely ruined.
Absolutely. Yeah.
By the way, I was walking down the street in Auckland today, Martin, you'll be pleased to know, and someone, this fine young man who was walking with a couple of others up the street, this is in Herne Bay in Auckland, said to me, "Are you Paul Brennan? You're Paul Brennan, aren't you?" And I sort of looked up and thought, should I confirm or deny? But I mean, it's pretty obvious I look a particular way. I said, "Yes, I am." And his name was Ben. He introduced himself, and he said he really liked our podcast. And this is right off the street in Auckland, in one of the classiest suburbs in the country, by the way. So we've got a good quality listeners, viewers. But anyway, he said, "Hey, say hi to Martin." So I'm saying that, and he told me that he had been training to fly. I think he'd be down in Palmerston North doing. Sorry, Ben, if I got the wrong place. It all happened so quick on the side of the road. But he'd moved up to Auckland Ardmore, wanting to finish his license and get eventually the airline transport license and move into the world of airlines. Obviously not the best time. There's going to be a delay in that, but you know, eventually there'll be a need for more pilots. So I wished him well, and I thought, well, that's pretty good. So we've got you know, there are people out there who like to listen to the program. So thank you, Ben, and we appreciate you listening, and it's always nice to have that sort of, you know, out of the blue thing happen on the street, Martin. Has it happened to you yet?
It is. No, not yet, no. Unlikely to happen to me in Brisbane.
Yeah, no, I know. That's okay. It's no measure of talent or anything like that at all, you know. It's
No. I don't take it that way.
Anyway, so that's good. Now, the aircraft of this episode, and the reason I chose this aircraft is the Lockheed, and I wonder if I can do the share screen thing here just to show everybody. You see the Lockheed Lodestar in the background there. That's going to be our aircraft of the episode, more specifically the Lodestar in New Zealand service. I think we had quite a few, almost 20 in service over the time, maybe even more. It was a pretty fast, high-tech airliner for its time. And I read a book, a self-published book by Captain Alan Canning. He died a while back. And the book really takes the reader through the setup of NAC, the early aircraft, his delivery flight when they sold the Lodestar fleet from New Zealand to California, and interesting story behind that. And I thought that that was a good enough reason, Martin, to nominate that aircraft. And it's always an aircraft that caught my eye. There used to be one, maybe there still is one, at the entrance to Gisborne Airport. I think it might have been one of the NAC ones, but it was converted to a top dresser by Field Air. And would have flown into Gisborne because they flew to all the provincial cities in the early part of NAC into the 50s. So we'll look at that a bit later on. But there's also a campaign about the future of Kapiti Airport, and this is where this shot was taken because that was the Wellington Airport back in the day before the Wellington Airport opened in 59. And they're trying to close it down, Martin. They're trying to close the bloody thing down. I was alerted to this, Martin, from or by Joshua Hay, who's an instrument flight instructor, and this is him coming to land at Paraparaumu. Look at Kapiti Island off there, beautiful, the northerly runway. I used to land on that runway myself. I think it's the northerly, or is it the no, that's the kind of the east by west, maybe. Anyway, here he is landing. Gosh, look at those flight instruments now, eh?
Yeah, cool.
They were steam gauge before. So there's a campaign to save Kapiti Airport, and I'll give more details as we get to the end of the program. And I'm going to stop sharing now and bring it back to us. And Yeah, it was a nice bit of video that he provided there. Hopefully it came out all right. But this is a sad thing because those local airports generate activity. Now, I know you can build another X amount of houses on that airport, but it generates a buzz and activity, things going on, really making a community. And that area is going to keep on growing. And there'll come a time when that airport, as well as being viable, let's say, for flight training and, charter stuff, where there will be, support future small airline. I mean, those air taxis of the future be perfect out of little airports like that, right?
Hmm.
I mean, that's what will happen, actually. You may imagine electric planes out of there.
Yes.
Yes. So anyway, they're fighting for its survival. They're raising awareness. We'll talk about that towards the end of the show. Let's start with aviation, though. In these COVID-19 times, everyone's getting smashed to pieces. Here in New Zealand, Martin, Air New Zealand wants about $290 million, I think, from the government, cash injection to stay viable until such time as the international market picks up again. Otherwise, they're saying that they could just become a domestic airline, which is like, wow.
Well, that's putting a bit of pressure on the government to give them their 290, and I'm sure they'll get it. But
you reckon?
Yeah, they'll get it. Don't you worry about that. But I was talking to a friend of mine earlier tonight about the situation in Australia. So they've got JobKeeper, where they're giving people money to so that they don't get fired, right? So the government is subsidizing wages to the tune of $750 a week per person, and it's costing billions, and they want to turn it off early next year. But the interesting thing is that's how much more money are they going to have to give out in grants to get these companies back on their feet? And that's when even more money is going to go, I won't say out the window, they're going to have to be invested. It's not going to be better by Christmas time.
Will it ever be better?
Simply
whack-a-mole. Well, bang, bang, bang. Up it comes again.
Well, even if you said, right, we're done, and it is what it is, and we're moving on. It's never going to be. It'll get better economically, but it's never going to be the same. And I just wonder to what extent government have got their heads around that. Boris Johnson saying in the UK, for example, a different example, saying, we want people to come back to the city, get back to work. Well, I regularly speak to 4 people in the UK, and 3 of them, still employed, don't even have offices to go back to because the company's given up their London offices. That's interesting. So they'll never go back to the city.
Yeah, well, I've heard quite a bit of the debate about the future of cities. People are questioning the future of actual cities.
Yeah, because these guys, they are city firms, and admittedly they're not huge companies, but there's 30, 40 people in each of their offices, and their company has made the decision, no, we're not going back. Done. We've given up the lease. We're moving out.
Wow.
And there'll be hundreds of companies like that in London, Auckland, Wellington, Brisbane, certainly in Victoria. I mean, a friend of mine here, I every time we speak, say, when do you think you're going back to the office? And he says, I don't think I ever will go back to the office for exactly the same reason. And the company can't come back to me and say, we need you back into the office to do all your work, because we've been doing all our work at home quite successfully for the past 4 months. So why should I come back? And it's saving him a fortune. And he'd even be willing to negotiate a pay cut.
Yeah, well, if it makes sense on the money.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, and when it comes to airlines, and like our situation with a national carrier that we've relied on for a long time to be our international, flag bearer, and also crucial in controlling, you would hope, substantially the inflows and outflows of tourism to this country, given that was a third of the economy not too long ago. I mean, how long can you keep on cash injecting when there's no foreign business going on? I mean, how long can you sustain that? And then when it comes about, how can you ever compete? You'll have the airlines that are still around will be ravenous dogs on pricing, won't they?
Absolutely.
Especially like the likes of Emirates, Qatar. They've reduced but they haven't stopped flying internationally. These carriers they really haven't stopped flying internationally. And
they had Al-Bakar on the news actually tonight. He was on the news here in Australia, and they were showing the number of people they're carrying into the city. So Melbourne obviously zero.
Yeah.
But 25 people a day into Adelaide, 35 people into Brisbane, 45 into Perth. And the guy says, yeah, well, no, we're running the planes empty, but it's important for us to keep the network open. And B, he says, we're filling the bellies with cargo. He says, we're basically turned into a cargo airline. Yeah. And he's waiting for exactly that.
You're not handling all those passengers.
Yeah.
But also that having those major hubs is a real boon, because you're going to get transit traffic so much still coming through. And if you're one of the only options in the world to be able to do that with that sort of reach, you're going to do business. And I noticed, I read that at Dubai, for example, and this is why I can't understand why we can't do it here, they test everybody. They monitor everybody that comes through, because they need to secure their transit hub. That's big business, so they'll do that. But it just shows you, though, that they can carry on a particular model that still works. Now, I don't know how you compete with that once it comes back to normal. It could be seriously difficult getting back in the business without being subsidized.
But the big story is 787's been grounded.
Yeah.
7.
Crikey.
8 787s have been grounded again.
What the hell?
Yeah. And so they've taken 8 out of apparently immediately out of service. Air Canada, Singapore Airlines, and one other airline.
10s.
And it seems...
And 9s.
Sorry?
So Singapore's got the 10s, right?
Yeah, Singapore's got the 10s, and they were built in Charleston, so I'm presuming they're 10s.
Right.
Right? How long has the 10 been in service?
A couple of years at least.
But I didn't think Canada had 10s. But anyway.
No. They've got 9s. But if they're at that plant, that's the commonality, isn't it?
Yeah, so it's Charleston, and there's 2 faults, and it's where they've got the barrels, the fuselage barrels come together. One barrel takes them up to where the pressure bulkhead sits.
Right.
Another barrel comes on with a tailplane and everything's on, and those barrels are manufactured. When they make them together, there's a sealing or a bonding ring that goes around the inside.
Right.
And to make sure that the loads, the flight loads from the tail and everything are transferred to the rest of the structure, they laser measure, and they construct custom shims to take up the little gaps that will be, unavoidably between those 2 mating surfaces. Well, it turns out they got the shims wrong.
Oh. And
this is not a problem at some theoretical never reach load. This is in-service load is now considered dangerous for these particular, and not that it'll necessarily be, not that it will be catastrophic, but that the stresses being imparted by the movement of these 2 halves will cause stress fractures and all that type of thing around it.
They must have come to light already.
So that's must have. So and it's right near the pressure bulkhead, which, if you remember, that Japan Airlines.
No, you don't want that.
No, you don't want that. So there's two problems. First of all, there's those shims aren't good.
So when you say those shims, when you say laser cut or custom made, are they custom made to every join, every individual join that's made?
Yeah, individual to that aircraft.
Yeah, that's right.
So they're not right. So they're not the right ones, and the surface of the carbon fiber is not as smooth as it should be. So even when it's all put together, the bonding surface, whether it's mechanical or chemical, it's not considered smooth enough to provide a good join. Right. So these planes are being grounded because they've got both problems. But what the article said, the article I was reading towards the end, saying that they don't know how many aircraft are in service that have one or other of the problems. So these planes, these 8 definitely have both of them, but they kind of left it open that there might be a whole heap of planes out there that have one or other of those problems.
Yeah.
They all need to be fixed. potentially. So that's something that Boeing don't really need at the moment. Although if you're going to have a big problems now, it's probably the time, considering nobody needs them anyway.
That's what I was thinking. So I wonder how this could end up. How many have been produced in Charlotte? Quite some, dozens, in the dozens by now, surely.
Yeah, quite a few. Yeah. And then they quoted a Boeing line worker saying, "Well, I'm not. He doesn't work there anymore." And he didn't sound like he had an axe to grind. He's saying, "Well, I'm not surprised, because that place was always about the numbers. It was always get the planes out, get the planes out, get the planes out."
Okay, so all that's happening while they're getting close. It looks like they're getting close to the MAX situation. Someone said that, or I saw mentioned that one of the airlines had changed the name. They dropped the MAX. It's just a 737-8 or something like that, and -7 and -9. That's kind of what we thought would happen. But the European authority is, I think, running their tests on the MAX in Vancouver, Canada. So that must be what facilitated through Air Canada, because they had a whole bunch, didn't they?
Yeah, well, they must be combining their testing, which is,
so they'll be hoping that this is all done real soon. And then there's that mammoth task of returning or delivering. How many are going to take deliveries, though? Those car parks could stay, full for quite some time yet.
Yes, exactly. So the question is now, who wants them?
Yeah. Wow. Yes. Well, not here, that's for sure. I saw also that talk of the long-range A321neo becoming the replacement or the go-to international aircraft instead of your A330s, A330neo, etc. So it looks like the resized aviation industry, long haul or medium to longish haul, is going to be filled by narrow bodies potentially in the future.
I'm taking all that with a pinch of salt, because I reckon once things get going, they'll get going again.
Well, you would hope so.
That's going to happen.
Looking around some of the layoffs, I see that American Airlines are talking about laying off 19,000 staff. 19,000.
That's incredible, isn't it?
That is about 20% of their workforce. So that's how big the workforce is.
Yeah. Qantas have just got rid of a whole bunch of their ground staff, right? They're outsourcing it.
Yep.
Should they ever need it again? And there's talk about Virgin, cutting half their staff permanently.
Yeah, and also Virgin Atlantic. I haven't caught up on the bankruptcy story, but I think they're still doing limited flying, aren't they? Again, they'll be trying to fill up the holds.
Yeah. And there was a rather unflattering story about Bain Capital, about how they normally operate. And I mean, it's bound to happen, especially in Australia. But this one guy was saying and actually he was an American analyst. He's saying, I can't believe they sold the airline to Bain, because Bain have a history of sucking as much, saddling the companies with as much debt as possible.
And asset stripping.
Asset stripping, and also charging consulting fees to the companies they buy. So we're now managing you. You have to pay us, $1 million a month for our expertise.
And remember the Mitt Romney, the Republican presidential candidate, up against Obama last time, second term. He's a Bain Capital man. So that's who you're talking about there. What about that FedEx 767-300 freighter that had the gear problem at LAX? The left gear didn't extend, and it was sort of sparks all the way down the runway.
Yes, and in Romania, I think it was yesterday or the day before, an Omnia 767 had a very similar problem, had a partial undercarriage collapse.
Yeah, well, one remembers the lot 76 that landed with gears up in Warsaw. Remember that?
Yeah, I do.
I don't think that aircraft ever flew again. It could be a sign of aging, those sorts of things. Though that was a new FedEx, wasn't it? That freighter. They've got a whole bunch of new ones. It was only a few years old.
Wonder what caused that, eh?
Huh?
Wonder what was the actual reason?
I'm just looking on my...
Have you ordered the new flight sim yet?
No, but I've been watching the videos. My golly.
So that Omnia, not Omnia. It's Omni Air International was on a flight from Kabul, Afghanistan to Washington D.C. with a refueling stop in Bucharest, Romania, and shortly after touchdown, the left landing gear collapsed.
Oh, okay. Well, this one says FedEx 767-300 freighter. Newark to Los Angeles, 2 crew, final approach, 24 right, LAX. Crew received an unsafe gear indication. Left main gear was not down and locked. Aircraft went around, entered a hold 5,000 feet. The crew working with checklists. The aircraft subsequently performed a low approach, runway 24 left. An inspection from the ground could not solidly determine whether the left main gear was down. The gear doors were open. Tower offered to have somebody placed to the runway for another inspection from the ground. The crew decided to perform another low approach. Aircraft positioned for another approach to runway 24 left, descending to about 300 feet. Operations vehicles placed along the runway reported the left main gear did not appear in position. They entered another hold. About 45 minutes and made another approach. The aircraft came to a stop on the center line of the runway, sitting on the nose gear, left main gear, and left engine cowling. First officer received serious injuries during the evacuation. Oh dear.
Yeah, and the one in Romania was came down and the left gear collapsed. So yeah, a spate, and that was on the 28th. So that was the day before yesterday.
Wow.
So 767s having landing gear problems today.
Yeah, well, there you go. Like I say, I remember that lot one. I never read why that gear, all of the gears failed, didn't they? In that one, none of them came down.
Yeah, nothing happened. Yeah,
hydraulic pump failure or something like that. Okay, so there've been no more rocket launches or anything. I see Elon Musk is now announcing he's got a pig with a chip in. That's great.
So yesterday the Delta Heavy was meant to go up, but it stopped, I think, 2 or 3 seconds before
did it?
liftoff. So they'd actually started the ignition sequence. So the sparklers and everything were going off, although the Delta Heavy doesn't have sparklers. But anyway, it was all going off, and 1 or 2 seconds before they scrubbed the launch. So that didn't go ahead. But today at 11 o'clock, SpaceX is launching, starting at 11 o'clock my time. SpaceX is launching 2 Falcon 9s, one into a regular orbit, another one into the first polar orbit being launched from Cape Canaveral since the 60s. So
go pole to pole, around that way.
Yeah, so that's going to take off and sort of do a dogleg around Cuba and then head on up.
Yep.
Which is going to be interesting. Apparently the landing of the booster is going to be interesting on that one.
I love it when they do that.
And they also want to. So SpaceX has potentially got 3 launches today: 2 Falcon 9s, and the Space Hopper serial number 6, I believe, is going to go and do another, or the Star.
Yeah, do another hop.
Is going to do another test hop, and I think Electron, the Kiwi company, they're going to be launching their Electron, I think, today or tomorrow.
Right. Okay.
So it's all on.
Yeah, everyone's doing it.
Yeah.
It's becoming a sort of like when the space program was full on back in the 60s and early 70s. People became so, oh yeah, okay, going to the moon again, all right.
Well,
what else was happening?
I must admit, I'm a bit like that. Like, oh yeah, whatever.
Yeah, and they make it look so easy with all that rockets landing by themselves again, and
it's amazing. I mean, I still watch it, but I'm like, they've launched another one today. I generally have to watch them after the fact because I've just missed it.
Yeah. I think the time is right to buy up 747 fuselages at scrap price, which makes them about 30 grand a fuselage, and do the hotel thing. Put them all around the world.
Yeah, like I said, I've seen that one in Sweden.
But look at all the fuselages. They've retired them all. There's dozens and dozens and dozens of them. They're all exactly the same. You could easily make a standard fit of pods in these things. Dozens and dozens. People would love it.
Yeah. Just put some partitions in and give everyone a business class seat. Yeah.
Yeah. On some of those stretched upper decks, you can make a great lounge.
You could.
Now's the time. Anybody want to invest?
I'm sure someone will do that.
Yeah. The T-shirt and mugs and the carry bag and caps designs are coming on great for the Bring Our Birds Home merchandise range to raise funds.
Oh, yeah.
I think people are going to find these very cool, Martin. They'll be very collectible. Of course, you'll want to buy a whole set. Know that.
Oh, yeah, boatloads, mate.
I want to do a set of 1/200 scale models, like of the 6 aircraft, all in one set. Those sort of die-cast, really high-quality models?
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, with all the right paint jobs on. I'm going to find out how much that costs. Limited run.
Yeah, well, I know a guy here who owns the biggest hobby store in Brisbane. I'm sure he can tell me what it costs to get
that's handy.
Runs made.
Yeah, if you could make an inquiry on my behalf, Martin, I would appreciate it. Let's go to
I'll have a word with them.
Let's go to I want to go to another, just bear with, another page here. Our feature plane, which is the Lockheed Lodestar. Look at that thing. The C-47B in the US Air Force service. And I think, let's go out here. The Model 18 in commercial service. First flew in September 39, in service the following year. And of course, they flew in New Zealand. How many did you say we had?
I think you had like 17, 18.
Yeah.
Yeah. Quite a
there's a nice, well, let's find out. I've got a picture of one here at Hokitika. I think it's Hokitika Airport here. Look at that thing. NAC one. You can see that they're wearing 40s clothes in the background there, or early 50s.
What was the benefit of them in terms of? I mean, they didn't look like they held a whole lot more people than a Hercules, than a Dakota.
Let's go back to the performance. So 10 to 14 passengers. First flew in 37. It says here sales had proved disappointing. Despite the aircraft's excellent performance, it was more expensive to operate than the DC-3. Gosh.
Yeah.
No wonder, eh?
Less people.
Yep.
And a bit faster, 250 mile an hour.
Series of crashes. Yeah, how fast to go? What does it say?
260, probably cruises around 200, 220 miles an hour.
That's not too bad.
Yeah. As a kid, I was very happy to build it was one of the bigger models I got. 148, I guess, whatever was
right.
After 172nd. And I had a Lockheed Hudson in Royal Air Force colours.
Yeah, that was the Naval Patrol, wasn't it? Or Maritime Patrol?
Yeah, and I was particularly happy that despite the fact I probably used about 5 litres of airfix glue on it, I managed to still keep the turret still managed to rotate. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. And they were sort of normally camouflage coloured, weren't they? Or brown colour?
I painted it up. Mine was camouflage, and I think it was duck egg blue on the underside. And,
right.
Yeah, I remember that, and a mixture of olive drab and whatever the other colour was. And I was very happy with it, and I hung it from my ceiling with some fishing line for a while. Next to my other favourite plane, which was I got a little bit later, but it was also a 1:48, a swordfish, a fairy swordfish.
Oh yes, they took out the torpedo aircraft, weren't they? And took out or finished off the Bismarck, didn't they?
Yeah. They or the Tirpitz or one of them. Yeah, they torpedo bomber. Yes,
real slow,
flat out at 85 miles an hour. Yeah, but anyway, and I was very happy with my Hudson.
Well, there are a couple have left in New Zealand. It's C-60 on static display at Motat in Auckland, built for United Airlines in 1940, and into the United States Army Air Force. In 41, went to the Royal Air Force. British Overseas Airways Corporation after that. Ended up in New Zealand as a top dresser, registration ZKBVE. That might have been is that the one we see at Gisborne? No, there's another one, C-60, Gisborne Aviation Preservation Society, Gisborne, previously operated by Royal Air Force. And another top dresser, BUV, to field air in 1957 at the gate at Gisborne Airport from 73 to 98. And there's one on static display at the National Transport and Toy Museum in Wanaka, Otago. That's where my good friend Jason Rhodes is, and I've had a look over that one. And he gets off approaches from all around the world for engines and parts and bits of wing off that plane, because apparently they're hard to get right now. So, if anyone's got one that's restoring one. Yeah, so he gets approaches all the time because there's just not that many around. So Elizabeth Taylor, one of Elizabeth Taylor's, I think, husbands had one. That might have crashed, actually, obviously not with her on board. And the reason I chose the aircraft is because a person I met years ago used to be the chief pilot of NAC Airlines, and was also ended up being the deputy CEO of Air New Zealand for a while. Alan Kenning, the late Alan Kenning, flew one of the NAC Lodestars all the way back from New Zealand to the States in the late 50s, because they sold the fleet. And his description of the sort of going through the sort of brokers, it sounded like a bit like Wild West. You hear of car salesmen, there are aircraft salesmen that are just as wheelie dealy. So, wow, look at that. What the hell?
Yeah, that's the Hughes 250. So that was a jazzed up version for corporate use.
Speaking of Hughes, I remember in the book, Alan said that he'd met Howard Hughes, and they tried to sell the aircraft to him. They met him at a function, and he wasn't interested. Don't need that.
No.
They've got good lines, though. Really elegant around the tail area with the twin boom.
Yeah. Twin tail was always cool, eh?
Nothing like the Connie with the 3. But obviously, it's an outgrowth of the Electra, right?
Yes. And went on to what happened? What came after it? I think it was what was the Ventura? Was it before that or after that?
It might have been after that, and then it was all the way. You had to wait all the way to the Electra for the next, the turboprop Electra for the next commercial plane, airliner.
Yeah. And
fancy it being more expensive than the DC-3 to operate. Crazy.
Yeah, funny, eh? Yeah.
So anyway, if you want to know more about the L-18, the Lockheed Lodestar, there's plenty of information around, some great photos, and especially some great photos from the old days of NAC, great black and white pictures. Just imagine the excitement of turning up to Paraparaumu to catch your Lodestar flight to Auckland, to Whenuapai, or to, down to Christchurch, or even, I don't know if they went as far as Dunedin back in the day. They probably did eventually, but would have been exciting. Woohoo!
Noisy and slow.
There might have been a crash in New Zealand too, in the hills behind Paraparaumu on approach to the airport there.
Wow. Yeah, on the ridge behind Waikanai.
That's the one.
Yeah, 15 people on board.
No nav aids, right? So they didn't know where they were in cloud.
10 a.m. in the morning.
Yeah. I think everyone was killed, weren't they?
Yeah, all 15 on board died.
Yeah. So there's also a DC-3 crash at Paraparaumu too. Came down on Raumati, suburb of Raumati, on an approach there once.
Really? Just what came down too early?
Yeah, right in the street. If you look that one up, you'll see it as well. That was the airport up till 59. That's where everything went. I think the Rongotai had a short field, and they had de Havilland Herons go in there. They ended up being a nightmare because the spars were weak.
Yes. As I said on the last podcast, I've been listening to those. I've been listening to other podcasts from the Royal Aeronautical Society, and oh my God, they were just talking about the characters that ran these aircraft design companies.
Yeah,
and they were run by authoritarian figures of their age. And if you were a young engineer and you found a safety issue, it was really, really hard to get them to change their minds. And a number of accidents had already been identified. Like, there was a Viscount problem. There was a problem with the Vanguard or something. They were all already noted that this is potentially a problem, and basically the chief engineer, no, she'll be all good.
Well, I think there was a Viscount crash in Western Australia, McRobertson Miller Airlines, and I think they were test flying it to determine whether it needed to have some sort of spar replacement or something. The wing folded and it crashed. But that was because the Brits made they made safe life fuselages, not fail safe.
Yes.
Their load paths and the structure were nothing like the Americans.
No.
Which gets back to the 787.
The guy was saying when he started out in the industry, he says it was pretty scary, because if you found something, it was could be career limiting to go and report a problem.
Oh crikey, fancy that! What sort of culture is that? Well, you remember that Alaska Airlines MD-80 that crashed off the coast of or 81, whatever it was, California, when the screw jack stripped and the trim ran away. People knew that there was a problem.
Yes.
Some guy even said we shouldn't let this thing out without replacing this, and they went, "Nah, it's all right.
Should be right."
Yeah, look what happened.
Yeah, and also that Boeing, those 737s with the hard over on the rudder.
Yeah,
it was, people had suspected it, not that particular aircraft, but people had said this could be a problem, and it just basically got denied.
Well, it's interesting because when that happened, I know from back in the day, Air New Zealand immediately replaced all their rudder actuators, the whole system, and in every of their plane, even before it was determined. I don't know if they found any problems.
The change needed, the change that was needed to make the actuator completely safe, it was a few dollars. It wasn't a big deal.
I think it was just one of the channels in the molding of the it was like had a bit where it could leak out into another track and would reverse the actuator direction. So if you're having a rudder hard over, you hit it the opposite way, you just made it harder over. Yeah, I think that's what happened.
Yeah, crazy.
Anyway, so that's pretty well wraps it. Well, the world's aviation industry, both in terms of flying and manufacturing, all that is really kind of in the fetal position right now.
Yes, it's God, I'm really wanting to go someplace and I can't, and it's bugging me.
Tell me about it. Can't even get out of the city, mate.
Yeah, it's better here.
I mean, the roadblocks go at midnight tonight, supposedly, but then they all drive from the roadblocks to the transport systems to stop people going on buses without appropriate facial wear.
But is it only on the transport? Don't you have to wear them everywhere now?
No, it's only on the transport.
But only on the buses?
Oh, okay. Well, on the trains as well.
Yeah, but not on the offices or on the street.
No. But that'll be next. You watch. That will be next.
Fair enough.
You gotta have some way of getting off the hen house roof after crowing about something that didn't quite turn out that way.
Yeah, fair enough.
You know what I mean? You can't just come out and admit, well, maybe we did that wrong. You've got to have a halfway house where people can climb down without losing face.
Yeah, you might be right there.
I think I am. And losing face, ironic, isn't it? You put a facial cover on to stop losing face. Anyway, that's about it.
All right, then.
We'll be back around this time next week. In the meantime, Paul Brennan from the bunker in Auckland and
Martin Oakes in suburban Brisbane.
Good night.
Ciao.
And just to finish, at the beginning of the podcast, I mentioned the communication we'd had from Joshua Hay from the Kapiti Coast. He's a flight instructor at Paraparaumu, and he's saying we need your help to save Paraparaumu Airport from closure by spreading the word about this very real threat. In the last week, they say, they have heard or become aware the new property developer owners of the airport are considering its closure. Aside from the impact to the community of the loss of scheduled air services from Paraparaumu operated by Air Chatham's and Sounds Air, and the obvious civil defence benefits, general aviation will be significantly impacted. Specifically, for aircraft staging to fly across the Cook Strait, talking about the distance away from Paraparaumu, Fox Pine and Otaki, and the fact that you need permission to land there. Avgas becomes very expensive. You can't buy it along the 131 nautical mile coastal route between Whanganui and Omaka if Paraparaumu goes. And 121 nautical miles fielding through to Omaka. Available though at Wellington International, but it'll cost you maybe $40 to land there, and there are airways charges, and it's expensive at peak time. Aircraft engineers are based there as well. And of course, the Kapiti Aero Club is there. If you want to find out more, go to the address that I've posted below in the comments section, or at the top of the comments section. And also, you see here graphically, and lend your support to the saving, if it comes to that, of Paraparaumu Airport. I learned to fly there in Echo Oscar Mike all those years ago in the 80s. Very fond of the place. And of course it has the great history of being the airport for Wellington before Wellington opened in 59. All those beautiful old shots of the NAC fleet going through there. So follow these links and see what you can do to help these folk. Thank you, Joshua, for getting in touch, and all the best with your campaign.